John disembarked from the plane, each step heavy with the crushing weight of aspirations he had relentlessly pursued, yet never truly grasped. Navigating through the crowded airport, his mind was a turbulent storm of memories from his lavish yet ultimately meaningless life in New York. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As he reached the arrival area, his heart pounded fiercely at the sight before him. There stood Sarah, the woman he had heartlessly abandoned 18 years ago, accompanied by a young woman whose unmistakable resemblance to him was a stark reminder of his past. John felt immobilized, his eyes locked on the duo as they maneuvered through the throng. Sarah's face, though etched with lines of fatigue and unyielding resilience, was still hauntingly familiar. The young woman beside her, unknown yet undeniably his daughter, hit John with an overwhelming surge of regret and sorrow. Struggling to process the scene, he watched helplessly as Sarah and the young woman vanished into the sea of people, leaving him with a profound sense of loss and a desperate urgency. Desperation clawed at his soul as he realized he had to find them. His decision to abandon Sarah in pursuit of wealth and success had been his gravest mistake. Now, faced with the opportunity for redemption, John knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The chaotic energy of the airport amplified his disorientation. Memories of his youthful days with Sarah flooded back, their shared dreams now eclipsed by his relentless ambition. Seeing the young woman, presumably his daughter, made him acutely aware of the profound impact his choices had on their lives. The distant echo of loudspeakers announcing flights faded into the background as John forced himself to move forward. He hurried to the baggage claim area, his heart racing with a blend of hope and anxiety. Desperately, he approached a security guard, describing Sarah and the young woman in detail, praying for any lead. "Sorry, sir, it's exceptionally busy today. Without more specifics, tracking someone is nearly impossible," the guard responded sympathetically. John nodded, gratitude mingled with frustration, and continued his search, his eyes scanning the throngs of people. Each unfamiliar face was a painful reminder of how disconnected he had become from Sarah's life. Taking a moment to sit in an airport cafe, John's thoughts drifted to the agonizing day he told Sarah of his decision to pursue his fortune in New York. He remembered her tearful pleas for him to stay, the heartache in her eyes, and the shattered promises. Blinded by his pursuit of success, he had left her behind, oblivious to the life-altering secret she harbored. The years that followed were filled with financial triumphs, glamorous parties, and superficial relationships. John had achieved the success he sought, but it came with a loneliness and an emotional void. Sarah, on the other hand, faced the monumental challenge of raising a daughter alone, a struggle he had never known. He never imagined the deep scars his departure would leave behind. Sitting in the cafe, John felt the weight of his choices bearing down on him. He knew he needed to find Sarah and Emily, the young woman he had only glimpsed. Every thought was a blend of fear and hope. What if they didn't want to see him? What if it was too late for forgiveness? Regret gnawed at his soul, but he was determined to make amends. Resolved to find Sarah and his daughter, John decided to revisit significant places from his past with Sarah, hoping to uncover clues about her current life. Each place he visited, from the park where they spent afternoons together to the old house where they had lived, brought back painful memories and a sense of loss. As he walked through these familiar places, John reflected on the devastating impact of his departure. Sarah had bravely fought to raise their daughter alone, facing unimaginable hardships. John realized that while he indulged in the glamour of his new life, Sarah was waging a silent, heroic battle. Finally, he understood that it would take more than luck to find Sarah and Emily. With a heavy heart, John prepared to face the consequences of his past actions, knowing he would need to find a way to regain their love and trust. Determined to rectify the mistakes of his past, John sought professional help. He enlisted the services of a private detective, an expert in finding lost people. The intense search began, and John was ready to do whatever it took to locate his family. The detective started by sifting through public records, searching for any clues about Sarah and Emily's whereabouts. Simultaneously, John retraced his steps through significant places from his past with Sarah, strolling through parks, sitting on old benches, and visiting their former home. Each location revived painful memories and a deep sense of loss. The detective managed to track down old friends of Sarah, individuals who still remembered her and might know where she was now. John eagerly accompanied the detective on each visit, desperate for any information. During one such visit, they encountered a longtime friend of Sarah who provided a crucial tip. Sarah moved to a nearby neighborhood a few years ago, the friend shared. She was trying to start over, and her daughter Emily is a very promising young woman, but she's been dealing with some health issues. The mention of Emily's health problems filled John with worry. He knew he had to find them as soon as possible. The detective pursued leads with renewed vigor. Each passing day brought John closer to reuniting with his family, but also intensified his awareness of the monumental task of regaining their trust. Meanwhile, John wrestled with his inner demons. Guilt and regret were his constant companions, reminding him of his choices and the price he had paid. He realized that when he finally found Sarah and Emily, he would have to face their anger and resentment, as well as his own feelings of inadequacy and remorse. After weeks of relentless searching, the detective finally uncovered a definitive lead: Sarah's current address. With his heart pounding, John prepared for the reunion, knowing he would have to confront the consequences of his past actions and find a way to regain the love and trust of Sarah and Emily. John stood in front of the modest house indicated by the detective, his heart racing uncontrollably. He took a deep breath, attempting to calm himself before taking the first step toward the door. Each step felt incredibly heavy as he approached the moment he had both longed for and deeply feared. When he finally reached the door, he hesitated for a moment before knocking. The sound echoed inside the house, and he could hear footsteps approaching. The door slowly opened, revealing Sarah. For an instant, both stood motionless, staring at each other in silence. Sarah looked surprised and cautious, but there was also an expression of pain in her eyes. "John," she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "Sarah," he replied, his voice laden with emotion. I needed to find you. I needed to see you." Sarah hesitated, her eyes welling up with tears. "Why now, John? After all these years?" John's voice cracked as he spoke. "I've realized how much I've lost, Sarah. I want to make things right." Before Sarah could respond, a young woman appeared in the hallway. It was Emily, her resemblance to John undeniable. She looked at the scene with curiosity and confusion. "Who is he?" Mom Emily asked, her voice filled with mistrust. John's heart sank. "Emily, I'm your father. I'm here to make amends." Emily's eyes narrowed, her voice cold. "The father who left us? The father who never came back?" John felt the sting of her words deeply. "Yes, Emily, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to be here now, for you and your mother." Emily turned to Sarah, seeking reassurance. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Emily, this is John. He wants to be part of our lives again." Emily's gaze hardened as she looked back at John. "We don't need you," she said, her voice trembling with anger. John felt a wave of despair but remained resolute. "I understand your anger, Emily. I deserve it, but please give me a chance to prove that I've changed." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's too late, John. You can't just come back and expect everything to be okay. Sarah stepped forward, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Emily, maybe we should give him a chance to explain." Emily looked at her mother, her expression torn between anger and longing. "Fine, he can explain, but it won't change anything." John nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the tension. "Thank you, Emily. I know it won't be easy, but I promise I'll do whatever it takes." As they sat down in the living room, John began to share his journey, his regrets, and his determination to make amends. Sarah and Emily listened, their emotions a mix of anger, pain, and cautious hope. John knew that earning their trust would take time and unwavering commitment, but for the first time in years, he felt that he was on the right path. As the evening wore on, they continued to talk, slowly chipping away at the walls that years of separation had built. It was just the beginning, but it was a start. John was determined to rebuild his relationship with Sarah and Emily, no matter how long it took. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but John was ready to face it, step by step, with the hope of one day being a true part of their lives again. Sarah interrupted him, the pain in her eyes transforming into anger. "You left us, John. You abandoned me. You have no idea what I went through." John felt the words like blows to his heart. "I know I made a terrible mistake, Sarah, but I'm here now. I want to make things right." Before John could continue, a young woman appeared in the hallway. It was Emily, and her resemblance to John was unmistakable. She looked at the scene with curiosity and confusion. "Who is he?" Mom Emily asked, her voice filled with mistrust. John's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the moment. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, his eyes meeting Emily's. "I'm your father," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I've come to make amends for the past, to be a part of your life if you'll let me." Emily's eyes widened, a mix of emotions playing across her face. She glanced at her mother, seeking reassurance. Sarah's expression softened slightly, though the pain was still evident. Sarah said gently, "This is John, your father. He left us a long time ago, but it seems he's come back." The air was thick with tension and unresolved emotions. John knew that regaining their trust would be a long and difficult journey, but he was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had to prove to Sarah and Emily that he was truly sorry and willing to do whatever it took to be a part of their lives again. As they stood in the doorway, the silence was broken by the faint sound of a clock ticking in the background, marking the beginning of John's quest for redemption. With a heavy heart and a determined spirit, John stepped into the house, ready to confront his past and embrace the future with his family. John looked at Sarah, his mind struggling to process the enormity of the situation. "Sarah, is this my daughter?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah hesitated, her eyes brimming with tears. "Yes, John, this is Emily. She's your daughter." The weight of the revelation hit John like a freight train. "My daughter," he murmured, as if trying to make the words real. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Sarah shook her head, fighting to keep her emotions in check. "You left us, John. I was alone, scared, and didn't know how you'd react. And then you never came back." John felt a sharp pang of regret in his chest. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Emily stood silent for a moment, her face a storm of emotions. Then her expression hardened, resentment flashing in her eyes. "My father? The man who abandoned us." John felt another stab of pain. "Emily, I know it's hard to understand. I made so many mistakes, but I'm here now to fix things." Emily crossed her arms, her stance defiant. "And you think you can just come back, and everything will be okay? You don't know anything about me, about us." John's heart ached with the enormity of his past failures and the daunting task ahead. "I understand your anger, Emily. I deserve it, But please give me a chance to make amends. I want to know you, to be a part of your life, if you'll let me." Emily's eyes softened for a brief moment before hardening again. "We'll see," she said coldly, turning away. "But it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. You have a lot to prove." John nodded, accepting the challenge. "I know, Emily. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." As Sarah watched this exchange, her heart battled between hope and the lingering scars of betrayal. She knew the road to forgiveness would be long and arduous, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was a journey worth taking. John drew in a shaky breath, his heart pounding as he searched for the right words. "Emily, I know I can't undo the past," he began, voice trembling with emotion, "but I desperately want to be part of your future. I want to be your father." Sarah, her eyes red and swollen from crying, interjected with a voice filled with years of pent-up pain. "John, you can't just reappear and expect everything to magically be okay. It's been years of heartache, of struggle. I had to be strong for both myself and Emily. You abandoned us." John's shoulders slumped, the weight of his guilt crushing him. "I know, Sarah, and I'm profoundly sorry. But I'm here now, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to show you I've changed." The air was thick with tension. Emily, her face a mask of defiance, turned to her mother. "I don't have a father. I never did, and I refuse to start now with that." She spun around and stormed into the house, the door slamming shut behind her with a resounding thud. Sarah, exhaustion etched into her features, looked at John with tear-filled eyes and sighed deeply. "Come in, John. We need to talk." John entered the modest yet inviting living room, the space filled with signs of a life marred by hardship but also by love. He sat on the couch while Sarah took a seat in an armchair opposite him. "Emily, she's going through so much," Sarah began, struggling to find the right words. John's face creased with concern. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice filled with worry. Sarah hesitated before deciding to lay everything bare. "She's having a hard time at school. She feels abandoned, and it's affecting her behavior and grades. She misses you, even if she won't admit it." John felt a wave of guilt wash over him. I didn't know, Sarah. If I had known, I would have come back sooner." Sarah shook her head. "That's only part of it, John. Emily is also sick. She has a serious condition that requires ongoing treatment." John's heart constricted. "What is it? How can I help?" Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Emily has a congenital heart defect. She's been in and out of hospitals her whole life. The medical bills are overwhelming, and it's been so hard to manage everything alone." John felt the ground beneath him shift. "Oh my God, Sarah, I had no idea. I'll do whatever it takes to help. I'll pay for the treatments, the bills, everything." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It's not just about the money, John. It's about being there for her, for us. She needs a father, not just a benefactor." John reached out, his hand trembling as he touched Sarah's. "I understand. I promise I'll be here for both of you. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Sarah looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. "This won't be easy, John. We have a lot of healing to do, and trust needs to be rebuilt." John nodded, determination filling his voice. "I'm ready for that, Sarah. I'm ready to fight for my family." As they sat together, the weight of the past hung heavily in the air, but so did a glimmer of hope. It would be a long and difficult journey, but John was committed to walking it, step by painful step, to earn back the love and trust of Sarah and Emily. John's shoulders slumped, accepting the bitter truth. "I know, Sarah, and I'm profoundly sorry. But I'm here now, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to show you I've changed." The air was thick with tension. Emily, her face a mask of defiance, turned to her mother. "I don't have a father. I never did, and I refuse to start now with that. She spun around and stormed into the house, the door slamming shut behind her with a resounding thud. Sarah, exhaustion etched into her features, looked at John with tear-filled eyes and sighed deeply. "Come in, John. We need to talk." John entered the modest yet inviting living room, the space filled with signs of a life marred by hardship but also by love. He sat on the couch while Sarah took a seat in an armchair opposite him. "Emily, she's going through so much," Sarah began, struggling to find the right words. John's face creased with concern. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice filled with worry. Sarah hesitated before deciding to lay everything bare. She's having a hard time at school. She feels abandoned, and it's affecting her behavior and grades. She misses you, even if she won't admit it. John felt a wave of guilt wash over him. I didn't know, Sarah. If I had known, I would have come back sooner." Sarah shook her head. "That's only part of it, John. Emily is also sick. She has a serious condition that requires ongoing treatment." John's heart constricted. "What is it? How can I help?" Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Emily has a congenital heart defect. She's been in and out of hospitals her whole life. The medical bills are overwhelming, and it's been so hard to manage everything alone." John felt the ground beneath him shift. "Oh my God, Sarah, I had no idea. I'll do whatever it takes to help. I'll pay for the treatments, the bills, everything." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It's not just about the money, John. It's about being there for her, for us. She needs a father, not just a benefactor." John reached out, his hand trembling as he touched Sarah's. "I understand. I promise I'll be here for both of you. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Sarah looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. "This won't be easy, John. We have a lot of healing to do, and trust needs to be rebuilt." John nodded, determination filling his voice. "I'm ready for that, Sarah. I'm ready to fight for my family." As they sat together, the weight of the past hung heavily in the air, but so did a glimmer of hope. It would be a long and difficult journey, but John was committed to walking it, step by painful step, to earn back the love and trust of Sarah and Emily. Sarah sighed deeply, her voice carrying the weight of the world. She has an autoimmune disease. It demands expensive medication and constant care. "I'm doing everything I can, but it's overwhelming." John felt an urgent need to act. "Let me help, Sarah. I can cover her treatment costs. I want to be part of your lives and support you in any way I can." Sarah looked at him, her eyes a mirror of pain and exhaustion. "It's not that simple, John. Emily won't accept your help easily. She's very angry at you, and so am I." John nodded, understanding the deep-seated emotions at play. "I know I have to earn your trust, but please let me help with Emily's treatment. It's the least I can do." At that moment, Emily reappeared in the doorway, her eyes blazing with tears and fury. "We don't need you," she declared, her voice firm and unwavering. "We've managed on our own so far. You can't just waltz in and think money will fix everything." John stood, taking a tentative step toward Emily, but she backed away. "Emily, I understand you're angry. I just want to help." Emily crossed her arms, her stance defiant. "You can't fix everything with money, John. You weren't there when we needed you. Now it's too late." John felt the sting of her words but remained steadfast. "I can't change the past, but I can be here now. Please let me help." Sarah stood, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. "Let's take this one step at a time, John. Maybe we can find a way for you to help, but it has to be on our terms and in our time." John nodded, realizing the long road ahead. "All right, I'll do whatever it takes. I just want what's best for Emily and for you." Sarah looked at him, a mix of hope and skepticism in her eyes. "We'll see how things go, but know that this will be a slow process." John agreed, determined to prove his commitment, ready to face any challenge to rebuild the trust and love of his family. In the days that followed, John made a concerted effort to visit Sarah and Emily regularly, attempting to slowly weave himself into the fabric of their lives. He could sense a faint glimmer of hope amidst the resistance, a subtle opening that hinted at the possibility of reconciliation. However, one thing eluded him entirely: the profound source of strength that seemed to sustain Sarah and Emily through their trials. One Sunday morning, Sarah extended an invitation to John to join them for church. He hesitated momentarily, but then agreed, driven by a curiosity to understand the wellspring of resilience that had fortified Sarah's spirit. Upon their arrival, they were enveloped in the warm embrace of the community. The church was modest yet brimming with an infectious energy of positivity. The congregation greeted Sarah and Emily with genuine affection, exuding a palpable sense of support and unity. The sermon was delivered by Pastor Michael, a man of middle age with a calm and welcoming presence. As he spoke, John observed how Sarah was deeply engaged, drawing solace from the words of faith and hope that Pastor Michael imparted. Even Emily, despite her visible pain, participated in the service in her own way, seemingly seeking a semblance of relief. After the service concluded, Pastor Michael approached them, greeting Sarah with a warm smile. "Sarah, it's always a joy to see you here. And this must be John," he said, extending a hand to John. "Yes, Pastor Michael, this is John," Sarah replied. "John, this is Pastor Michael, our friend and spiritual guide." John shook the pastor's hand, feeling a wave of respect for the man who evidently held a significant place in Sarah and Emily's lives. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Pastor Michael," John said, trying to mask his underlying anxiety. "John, I understand you've come back into Sarah and Emily's lives. It's a challenging journey you're embarking on, but I'm here to support you in any way I can," the pastor said with a gentle smile. John felt a sense of relief, knowing there was someone who could help him navigate the difficult path ahead. "Thank you, Pastor Michael. I appreciate that more than you know." The pastor nodded. "The first step is always the hardest, John, but with faith, perseverance, and love, anything is possible." John looked at Sarah and Emily, his heart swelling with determination. He knew the road to redemption would be long and arduous, but he was ready to face it head-on. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope, believing that perhaps, just perhaps, he could mend the broken pieces of his family and build a future together. John nodded, feeling a bit more at ease. "Thank you, Pastor. I know regaining their trust will be a long process." Pastor Michael led John to a bench in the church garden, where they could converse more privately. The tranquil setting provided a stark contrast to John's turbulent emotions. Meanwhile, Emily sat in the last row of her classroom, her gaze fixed on the window, completely disengaged from the math lesson. The recent upheaval in her life had further destabilized her already fragile existence. The anger and hurt she harbored toward John made it nearly impossible to concentrate. Once a diligent student, Emily now struggled with her academics, the past few months being particularly grueling. At school, Emily faced incessant challenges. Her classmates perceived her as the troubled girl with an absent father and a perpetually worried mother. She felt isolated and misunderstood, with every malicious comment or pitying glance only deepening her frustration. Her health, already precarious, added another layer of complexity. Frequent hospital visits and medical treatments caused her to miss numerous classes, further complicating her academic performance. At home, the situation was no better. Sarah tried to maintain a semblance of stability, but John's presence created palpable tension. Emily avoided any interaction with him, keeping her distance and remaining cold. The pain of abandonment was still a raw wound, and she found it impossible to forgive him for leaving her mother to shoulder all responsibilities alone. John, on his part, made every effort to reach out to Emily. He attempted to engage her in conversation, showing interest in her activities, but was invariably met with silence or curt, sharp responses. Each failed attempt at connection only fueled his determination, yet also his desperation. He knew that regaining his daughter's trust would require time and immense patience. One particularly difficult night, Emily locked herself in her room, tears streaming down her face. She felt utterly powerless, overwhelmed by her illness, school problems, and her father's sudden reappearance. Everything seemed too much to bear. Sarah knocked gently on the door, trying to offer comfort, but Emily was in no mood to listen. "Emily, dear, I know it's hard, but you need to give your father a chance. He's trying," Sarah said softly, her voice full of care. He left us, Mom. He doesn't care. And now he thinks he can just come back and fix everything. I don't want that," Emily sobbed. In the hallway, John overheard the conversation, feeling even more helpless. He wished he could make things right, but knew that words alone wouldn't suffice. He needed to show, through consistent actions, that he was committed to being a present father. Emily continued to wrestle with her emotions. The anger and hurt were intense, but a small part of her yearned for a father. She remembered the stories her mother told about John, about how he was before he left. Yet those happy memories were always overshadowed by the pain of abandonment. Every day was a struggle for Emily. At school, she tried to maintain a facade, but inside she felt fragmented. At home, John's presence was a constant reminder of everything she had lost. The path to reconciliation was long, and Emily wasn't sure she was ready to forgive. The journey ahead for John, Sarah, and Emily was fraught with challenges, but within that struggle lay the possibility of healing, forgiveness, and the reformation of a family torn apart by the past. John felt the weight of responsibilities increasing daily as he tried to reconnect with Sarah and Emily. His old business rivals began to threaten his newfound stability, and constant messages and calls from his company in New York only intensified his feeling of being pulled in multiple directions. One morning, while attempting to focus on important documents in Sarah's small home office, his phone rang yet again. It was his assistant in New York, reporting critical issues that needed his immediate attention. John knew his presence was essential at the company, but he also knew his absence would be devastating for his attempts to win back his family. "Sir, we need you here to resolve this. The investors are getting impatient, and we have a crucial meeting next week," his assistant said, urgency evident in his voice. John sighed, feeling the tension rise. "I understand, but I can't leave my family now. I'll try to handle as much as I can from here," he replied, trying to stay calm. The pressures of business began to interfere with his ability to connect with Emily and Sarah. Though he was physically present, his mind often wandered to the problems at the company. Emily, perceptive as ever, noticed his distraction and drifted even further away. To her, it seemed that he was more concerned with his business than with her. One evening, while Sarah was preparing dinner, John tried once more to talk to Emily. "Emily, I know things are tough right now, but I'm here for you. I want to be a present father," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "You say that, but you're always on your phone, always thinking about your work. How can I believe you when you don't even pay attention to us?" she retorted. John felt a pang of guilt. "You're right, Emily. I've been distracted, but I'm trying to balance everything. Please, give me a chance to prove that I'm committed to being here for you and your mother."
Emily's expression softened slightly, but her defenses remained up. "We'll see," she said quietly, before turning away.
As the days passed, John struggled to find the right balance between his business obligations and his efforts to reconnect with his family. He began setting strict boundaries with his work, delegating responsibilities to trusted colleagues and prioritizing his time with Sarah and Emily. Gradually, he started to make small but meaningful connections with his daughter. He attended her medical appointments, helped her with schoolwork, and showed genuine interest in her hobbies. Despite the incremental progress, Emily's walls remained high. She had endured too much pain and disappointment to easily let down her guard. John knew he had to be patient and persistent, demonstrating through his actions that he was there to stay. One Sunday, John joined Sarah and Emily for church again. This time he listened more intently to the sermon, finding solace and guidance in the pastor's words. After the service, Pastor Michael approached John, offering him encouragement and advice. "John, building trust takes time. Keep showing up, keep being present, and eventually they'll see your sincerity," he said. John thanked Pastor Michael, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the journey ahead would be long and challenging, but he was determined to earn back the trust and love of his family. With each passing day, he focused on being a better father and partner, hoping that one day Emily would fully open her heart to him. As the sun set on another day filled with small victories and setbacks, John sat quietly in the garden, reflecting on his journey. He realized that true redemption would not come easily, but he was willing to fight for it. The path to healing was fraught with obstacles, but within that struggle lay the potential for a stronger, more united family. And for John, that was worth every effort and sacrifice. Without looking at him, Emily replied coldly, "You say that, but you're always on the phone solving your business problems. It seems like nothing has changed. You still care more about your work than about us." John felt the impact of Emily's words. He knew she was right, but he didn't know how to balance the two parts of his life. He was miles away from his company in New York, but also miles away emotionally from his daughter, despite being physically present. The crisis reached its peak when an emergency at the company required his immediate attention. He spent hours on the phone trying to resolve the situation, while Emily and Sarah isolated themselves, realizing that his efforts to reconnect were failing. One morning, Pastor Michael came to visit them. He found John exhausted, with deep circles under his eyes and a worried expression. "John, I see you're facing many challenges. It's not easy to balance all this," said the pastor, placing a comforting hand on John's shoulder. "I don't know what to do, Pastor. I'm losing control of my business and my family. It seems like I'm failing in every aspect," John confessed, his voice full of frustration. Pastor Michael looked at John with empathy. "John, I understand the struggle you're going through. Balancing your professional and personal life is incredibly difficult, especially given the circumstances. But remember, you don't have to do this alone." John sighed deeply. "I just want to make things right with Sarah and Emily. But every time I think I'm making progress, something happens, and it feels like I'm back at square one." The pastor nodded. "It's a long road, John. Trust and relationships take time to rebuild. Have you thought about finding someone to help you with your business affairs, so you can focus more on your family?" John rubbed his forehead, the tension evident. "I've considered it, but I'm worried about losing control of my company. It's all I've ever known." Pastor Michael leaned in slightly, his voice gentle yet firm. "Sometimes letting go of a bit of control in one area can give you the freedom to regain it in another. Delegating some responsibilities at work might be the key to rebuilding your relationship with Sarah and Emily." John listened, feeling a spark of hope amidst his despair. "Maybe you're right. I need to find a way to be more present for them." The pastor smiled. "Start by taking small steps. Show Emily and Sarah that you're here to stay, not just physically but emotionally. Actions speak louder than words." John nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "Thank you, Pastor. I'll try to do that." As the pastor left, John sat back, contemplating his next move. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was committed to making things right. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. "John, remember, you don't have to shoulder everything by yourself. There are people here willing to offer support. The community can be your strength, and maybe it's time to delegate more tasks at work," the pastor advised with genuine concern. John felt the weight of the pastor's words. He knew he had to find a way to balance his responsibilities and show Emily and Sarah that they were his top priority. But how? That question gnawed at him as he tried to navigate the crisis threatening to dismantle everything he held dear. In the days that followed, John took the pastor's advice to heart. He began delegating more tasks to his team in New York, trusting them to handle the company's immediate needs. This allowed him to be more present with Sarah and Emily. He made a conscious effort to engage with them, to listen more than he spoke, and to show through his actions that they were his priority. He joined them for meals, helped Emily with her schoolwork, and even attended her doctor's appointments. Slowly, Emily began to see the change in him. Though still guarded, she started to open up, sharing small snippets of her day with him. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, John shared a story from his childhood that made Emily smile for the first time in a long while. It was a small victory, but it filled John with hope. He continued to make efforts to connect with her, not just as her father, but as someone genuinely interested in her life. Sarah noticed the change too. She saw John trying to balance his responsibilities and admired his determination. One night, as they were cleaning up after dinner, she placed a hand on his arm. "You're doing good, John. I see the effort you're putting in. Thank you." John looked at her, feeling a swell of emotion. "I'm just trying to make things right. I know I have a long way to go, but I won't give up." Sarah smiled softly. "We'll get there, one step at a time." As weeks turned into months, John's persistent efforts began to pay off. Emily started inviting him to her school events and medical appointments. She still had moments of anger and frustration, but they were interspersed with genuine moments of connection. One day, after a particularly good day at school, Emily came home and found John in the garden. She hesitated for a moment before walking up to him. "Dad," she said quietly, "thanks for sticking around." John turned to her, his heart swelling with emotion. "I wouldn't be anywhere else, Emily. I'm here for you, always." Emily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a start. John knew there was still a long road ahead, but he was ready to walk it, hand in hand with his family, toward a future filled with hope and possibility. Sarah, too, noticed John's efforts. She saw how hard he was trying to balance his work and family life, and her heart softened. They had long conversations about their past, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. John knew it would take time to rebuild their trust fully, but for the first time he felt they were on the right path. One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, Emily looked at John and said, "Dad, thank you for being here." It means a lot. Her words, though simple, were filled with profound significance. John felt a surge of emotion. He had a long way to go, but he was no longer alone in his journey. With Sarah and Emily by his side, he knew they could face any challenge that came their way.
However, the situation between John and his family deteriorated rapidly. Emily, grappling with the relentless challenges of lupus, continued to face severe health issues. The constant hospital visits and ongoing treatments were a heavy burden on everyone, especially Sarah, who was worn out and stressed to her breaking point.
One night, after an especially grueling day, Sarah's frustration boiled over. John sat on the couch, his head in his hands, when Sarah walked in. Her eyes were red from fatigue, and tension was etched across her face. "John, I can't take it anymore," she began, her voice quivering with emotion. "You have no idea what I've been through all these years alone. I had to raise Emily by myself with no support. I had to work tirelessly to provide for us, all while facing the stigma of being a single mother.
John looked up, guilt flooding his eyes. Sarah, I know I was wrong, but I'm here now, trying to make things right.
Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. You don't understand, John. It's not just about being here now. I never got to marry, never had another relationship. Emily's health always demanded my full attention. There was no room for anyone else in my life. John felt a knot tighten in his throat. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how much you were suffering.
How could you, Sarah replied bitterly. You were living your life in New York, making money and building your career, while I was here struggling to survive. Every day was a battle, and I was alone.
John sank deeper into the couch, the weight of guilt crushing him. I know nothing I say can change the past, but I'm willing to do anything to fix this, to help you and Emily. Sarah wiped her tears, but her expression remained stern. John, words are not enough. I need to see actions. Emily needs to see that you really care, because so far, all she sees is a man who abandoned her and now wants to solve everything with money. John nodded slowly, understanding the depth of Sarah's despair. I will prove to you that I've changed. I'll do whatever it takes, but at that moment, he knew the road to redemption would be long and arduous. Sarah's words echoed in his mind, each a painful reminder of the years of suffering she and Emily had endured without him. The guilt and sadness deepened, but also fueled his determination to make things right.
One quiet evening, chaos erupted. Emily, who seemed to be improving, suddenly began to experience intense pain and had difficulty breathing. Sarah rushed to Emily's room, finding her daughter bent over in agony and sweating coldly. Desperate, she shouted for John, who immediately ran to help. Emily, please, take deep breaths. It's going to be okay, Sarah tried to calm her daughter, but her own panic was evident in her voice. John lifted Emily in his arms, carrying her quickly to the car. On the way to the hospital, he drove as fast as he could, his mind a whirlwind of fear and guilt. Sarah held Emily's hand, trying to comfort her, while John kept his eyes fixed on the road. At the hospital, the medical team acted quickly, taking Emily to the emergency room. John and Sarah were left in the waiting room, filled with anxiety. Each minute felt like an eternity. Sarah cried quietly while John felt powerless, haunted by Sarah's words about facing everything alone.
Suddenly, Pastor Michael entered the waiting room, called by a desperate message from Sarah. He approached John, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. John, in moments like this, we need faith. Let's pray together for Emily, said the pastor with calm serenity. John looked at Pastor Michael, feeling a mix of despair and disbelief. Pastor, I don't know if I can. I've never been a man of faith. I don't know if I can believe. Pastor Michael nodded, understanding. I know it's hard, John, but faith can be a source of strength in times of crisis. Let's try together.
They knelt in the small hospital chapel, Pastor Michael leading the prayers, while John, for the first time in years, tried to connect with something greater than himself. God, I know I haven't been a man of faith, but I'm here, asking for my daughter's life. Please help Emily, he murmured, his voice breaking with emotion.
As they prayed, John felt a wave of repressed emotions emerge. He remembered a secret he had kept for years, something he had never told anyone. Pastor, there's something I need to confess, he said, his voice full of pain. Pastor Michael turned to him, his expression gentle and encouraging. Go ahead, John. This is a safe place. John took a deep breath, the weight of his secret pressing down on him. When I was in New York, I had a chance to come back. There were times when I thought about returning to Sarah and Emily, but I was too afraid. I was afraid of facing the mess I had left behind. I chose my career over them, not just once, but repeatedly. I abandoned them because I was a coward. Pastor Michael listened intently, allowing John to pour out his heart. John, admitting your mistakes is the first step toward healing. We all have moments of weakness, times when we choose the wrong path. But you're here now, and you have a chance to make things right. You can't change the past, but you can shape the future with your actions and your love.
John nodded, tears streaming down his face. I don't know if they can ever forgive me, Pastor, but I want to try. I want to be the father and partner they deserve. Pastor Michael placed a reassuring hand on John's shoulder. You can, John. It will take time, patience, and unwavering commitment. But with faith and determination, you can rebuild the trust and love that were lost. As they finished their prayer, John felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it with newfound strength and purpose. Returning to the waiting room, John and Sarah sat together in silence, their hands clasped tightly. Hours passed, each one filled with a mix of fear and hope. Finally, a doctor approached them with a tired but reassuring smile. Emily is stable now. She had a severe flare-up, but we managed to get it under control. She'll need to stay here for a few days for observation.
Relief flooded through John and Sarah. They thanked the doctor and hurried to Emily's bedside. She was pale and weak, but her eyes opened slightly when she saw them. "Dad, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. John leaned in, his heart full of love and regret. "I'm here, Emily. We're here. And we're not going anywhere." Sarah took Emily's hand, tears of relief and exhaustion streaming down her face. "We're here, sweetheart. Everything's going to be all right." As Emily drifted back to sleep, John and Sarah exchanged a glance filled with unspoken understanding. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but they were ready to face it together as a family. For the first time in years, John felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that with faith, love, and perseverance, they could overcome anything. Pastor Michael looked at him, encouraging him to continue. "Speak, John. I'm here to listen."
When I left Sarah, it wasn't just out of ambition. I was running from something. I had discovered that I had a son with another woman before meeting Sarah. I was afraid that this woman would find me and learn about my new life. I had already abandoned the mother of my son. And the fear of being discovered made me flee again. Years later, I learned that my son got involved with a gang and died. I carry a huge guilt for that, and this guilt has haunted me all these years.
Pastor Michael took a deep breath, absorbing the revelation. "John, we all have secrets and regrets. What matters is what we do from here. Use this revelation as a step toward redemption. You are here now, trying to make things right. That's a start."
John nodded, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. He knew his journey of redemption was just beginning, but now he felt a new determination to face his demons and do whatever was necessary to save Emily and win back his family. When the doctor finally entered the waiting room with a serious look on his face, John and Sarah quickly stood up. Emily is stable, but we'll need to monitor her closely. It was a serious crisis, but she is strong, said the doctor, offering a glimpse of hope.
Emily finally left the hospital, still weak, but with a timid smile on her face. John was by her side, helping her walk to the car. The journey home was smooth, and Sarah felt a sense of relief seeing Emily out of the hospital, although she knew recovery would be slow. In the days that followed, John took the pastor's advice to heart. He began delegating more tasks to his team in New York, trusting them to handle the company's immediate needs. This allowed him to be more present with Sarah and Emily. He made a conscious effort to engage with them, to listen more than he spoke, and to show through his actions that they were his priority. John joined them for meals, helped Emily with her schoolwork, and even attended her doctor's appointments. Slowly, Emily began to see the change in him. Though still guarded, she started to open up, sharing small snippets of her day with him.
Sarah, too, noticed John's efforts. She saw how hard he was trying to balance his work and family life, and her heart softened. They had long conversations about their past, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. John knew it would take time to rebuild their trust fully, but for the first time, he felt they were on the right path.
One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, Emily looked at John and said, "Dad, thank you for being here." It means a lot. Her words, though simple, were filled with profound significance. John felt a surge of emotion. He had a long way to go, but he was no longer alone in his journey. With Sarah and Emily by his side, he knew they could face any challenge that came their way. Back at home, John and Sarah prepared a comfortable space for Emily to rest. John devoted himself completely to caring for his daughter, preparing her meals, helping her with medications, and spending hours by her side talking. Each day, Emily seemed more receptive to John's presence, opening up a bit more. While Emily rested on the couch, John sat beside her, holding her hand. "Emily, I know things have been tough, and I know there's still a lot we need to sort out, but I want you to know that I'm here for you always."
As days turned into weeks, John's unwavering dedication began to show. Emily, although still frail, started to regain a glimmer of the spark that had been extinguished by years of illness and absence. John's commitment to being present and supportive was a silent promise that resonated deeply within the household. Sarah, too, started to notice the subtle changes in Emily's demeanor, the small smiles, and the way she seemed more at ease with her father around.
John knew his journey towards redemption was far from over. The scars of the past were deep, and the path ahead was strewn with obstacles. But for the first time in years, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each moment spent with Emily, every shared laugh, and every quiet conversation was a step towards healing the wounds he had inflicted.
In the quiet moments of the night, when the world was asleep, John often found himself reflecting on his past actions. The guilt and regret were heavy, but they were no longer paralyzing. Instead, they fueled his determination to be a better father and to earn the trust and forgiveness of the family he had once abandoned. He understood that actions spoke louder than words, and he was ready to prove his love and commitment through every deed, no matter how small.
With each passing day, the bond between John and his family grew stronger. The road to redemption was indeed long and arduous, but John was prepared to walk it, step by step, with unwavering resolve. He knew that true healing would take time, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead for the sake of Emily and Sarah and for the chance to finally make things right. Emily looked at him, her eyes glistening with a blend of emotion and gratitude. "I know, Dad." I'm starting to see that Emily's words ignited a spark of hope in John's heart. They continued their conversation, sharing stories and moments they had never had the opportunity to experience together. John spoke about his life in New York, his triumphs, and his regrets, while Emily talked about her school experiences and her dreams for the future. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in many years, she felt like they were a family again. Tears streamed down her face as she witnessed the growing bond between John and Emily.
Despite all the hardships, Sarah knew they were on the right path. The journey of reconciliation and healing was just beginning, and each step, no matter how slow, was a sign of progress. That night, as John and Emily conversed in the living room, Sarah joined them. She sat next to Emily, wrapping an arm around her daughter and holding John's hand. Together, they formed a circle of love and support, vowing to face the future united.
The reunion had not been easy, and many challenges still lay ahead, but with slow steps and in their own time, they were beginning to rebuild their lives together. The faith and love that had sustained Sarah were now beginning to envelop John and Emily, creating new hope for the future. Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of peace at last. Life was moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, she could envision a bright future ahead. With John by her side and Emily in her heart, she knew they could overcome any obstacle. If this moving story of redemption, love, and overcoming obstacles touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it with your friends and family. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our inspiring stories. Despite all the hardships, Sarah knew they were on the right path. The journey of reconciliation and healing was just beginning, and each step, no matter how slow, was a sign of progress. That night, As John and Emily conversed in the living room, Sarah joined them. She sat next to Emily, wrapping an arm around her daughter and holding John's hand. Together they formed a circle of love and support, vowing to face the future united. As we come to the end of this poignant story of redemption and love, it's clear that John's journey was not an easy one. His path to making amends for abandoning his family was fraught with challenges and deep emotional scars. Yet, through perseverance, genuine remorse, and unwavering determination, he began to rebuild the trust and connection with Sarah and Emily. This story reminds us of the power of forgiveness and the importance of being present for those we love. It highlights the strength required to face our past mistakes and the courage needed to make things right. We'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from John's journey? Is there one lesson from this story that you will bring into your own life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.